in identifying the converging layers of science that point to our awakened brain as inherent to who we are, our awakened brain as necessary to our flourishing and wholeness and performance. We used multiple levels of analysis. It started with epidemiology. And epidemiology, of course, is the practice through which you effectively look out the window of the airplane at 10,000 feet and you identify patterns. Right? The lights are on in this village, the lights are off in that village. What might be said about the use of power and energy between the two villages? Well, patterns, right? And looking at patterns through the lens of epidemiology, I was a risk and resilience scientist. I wanted to know what was the pathway to health, what was the pathway to recovery. And normally we'd say, well, look here. If you have good parents, you are 20% less likely to become depressed. Well, look here. If your needs are provided for, if you have enough material resources, you are 15% less likely to become depressed. Using this standard model, this epidemiological risk and resilience model, I asked the question back in 1997. First time this was ever published. How does a child do if there's a strong spiritual life in the family?
And were you castigated for even asking that question?
More like teased.
Yeah.
And these people were my friends and they taunted me mercilessly, right? Actually, to be honest, people who didn't know me would walk out of Grand Rounds presentations. It was not the taste or the appetite. It wasn't the culture of science, right?
Grand Rounds being where you share the work that you're doing with your peers.
Yes. And well, and at that point, I was relatively junior and people who I so admired in the scientific community got up, walked up the aisle, exited the double doors, and then slam. I'm not interested in spirituality. So, that I had a choice, right? I could either decide, wow, these people who are so successful as scientists, they don't like this. I better quit and change. I could play to the crowd, right? But I took the evocativeness of the topic and the complete absence. I mean, it was a very arid, dry desert. There was not one published peer-reviewed article on spirituality and mental health in the first 2 decades of life. That's window of onset for the lifetime course. So I took this to mean the work needed to be done. And I took the complete disdain of some scientists who, not on scientific grounds, but as a matter of taste and appetite, didn't take to the topic.
Sure, which is fundamentally anti-scientific, right? To allow that kind of bias or preconceived notion of what spirituality is or is not, or the impact that it may or may not have, to just be dismissive altogether from the outset is not really an objective way of looking at problems.
That's not science, right?